I've always been I love education, but I hate school. I absolutely hate school. And for the main reason being is that it's like a lot of it, like majority of it, like 95% of it is theory. I think I've only been in maybe one, maybe two classes in my, primary school and then college experience where it was actually like, okay, this is stuff you need to apply to your life. Otherwise, it's kind of like theories like, oh, this is how you manage a business. And I'm like, well, I want to be able to apply that. Like, why don't we have assignments where it's like, hey, you need to curate this like idea. You need to see how like profitable it is. You know what I'm saying? Like really apply it kind of thing. I'm a real applicable kind of guy when it comes to life. So when it came to consistency or when it came to just in enjoying some parts of your life, a lot of times I fell short of like, I didn't know exactly what to do. You know what I'm saying? I was like, well, damn, I don't really know how I'm going to get out of this situation. You know what I'm saying? Because no one has ever given me the resource to learn it. So I have to figure it out on my own, which is great. Because I think people should have initiative. You know what I'm saying? Like you should look out and be like, all right, if I'm not doing well in this area of life, let me see what I need to do in order to get better. But yeah, like just applying. It sounds easier said than done. But I don't know. It's like whenever I find myself like being short on something, I'm like, all right, let's make a game plan and then just, try it. Obviously, it's not always going to go like 100%. Never does. Like I used to think that, having a game plan and like, all right, cool, this is it. And then it crumbles and I'm like, oh my God, I'm such a failure. It's like you have to fail like 1,000 times before even one plan ever works. That's like every day.
Going back to like what you said about school, right? Like the first thing you said is like, I love learning.
I love education.
I
hate school.
I hate school. My question is, what other system can we create to formalize education?
What other system can we formulate?
No. What other system can we create?
Oh, create.
So yeah, okay. What other system can we formulate, right? To formalize education. Because there's different types of education, right?
Yeah.
There's in academic theory or in educational theory, there's informal, there's non-formal, and then there's formal, right? So I'm going to get informal and non-formal maybe mixed up because it's been a few years since I learned this. Right. But informal forms of education is like you just living life and going through life and just from like your experiences and you gain a certain level of education. What would I say? Informal, unformal?
Informal. Mm-hmm. Non-formal.
Okay, non-formal. So non-formal education is like non-formal is like if you were to go out and register for a class, go to private school, be homeschooled. You're going to an educational service, but it's not the one that we as a society have created. We as a society, we've formalized our education. We've said that there's a certain amount of knowledge that's necessary for you to live. And we want to make it easier to pass down that knowledge. Like if you had to go through life and learn every single thing by yourself, it would take forever. It'd be horrible, right? So we have to create this system that like helps speed along some development processes and cognitive functions and abilities and thinking skills and all that. How can we create a marriage between almost like those two things? How can we still formalize our education systems, right? But not lose what you're saying. How can we not lose the ability to fail, right? Because the whole point of a formal education system is for you not to fail at its core. That's the reason we teach you. The reason I'm going to teach you how to fish is so that you don't stand there by the river for 6 hours with a banana.
All right.
You know what I'm saying? I just said banana because it's right here, but it's the same concept. You know, it's because you have to learn. It's like, okay, let's teach these people and whatever. So what's the balance between those two things?
I think it kind of just starts with reforming the way school even is. So school was created in the industrialization era, right? And the whole point was that it was like, oh, damn, these workers are dying because they're not getting the knowledge to know what is like, you know what I'm saying, what's hazardous, what they're supposed to do, kind of thing. So they created school. And school, the whole basis of school was to create people, like not create people, but to make people go into the system, understand the formalized education that they give them, and then come out as workers. That was the whole point of the school system. But it hasn't been reformed since then. Like if you compare, I'm not saying, oh, school is prison, but I'm saying like in terms of how it is, it's like there's a certain amount of there's authority that you have to listen to. There's a certain time where you can leave the classroom, you go into the halls, the long corridors kind of thing. At this time you can eat, at this, you know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm not saying like, don't, do that. I think there should be a formal basis of like, certain times of the day you do this. But I think instead of the basis being, letter grades or like, oh, if you failed, then, I'm saying, whatever it is, I feel like there should be an implementation of like courses that can help you maneuver through life. So I'm not saying, oh, get rid of math and get rid of English. And no, these are core foundations of the human experience. Like you need to understand these things, right? But I feel at a certain threshold, I'm not really sure where it would be, but I feel like there should be a point where it's like, okay, we have these classes, cool. They don't need to be the main focus now. Now the main focus, especially as you're developing, it should be understanding personal skills. It should be understanding how to navigate through this or that. And instead of it being like, letter grades, because what I've learned is that a lot of students don't really do it because they're learning. They're doing it to get the letter grade. It's not about, oh yeah, like that's such a great piece of information. It's more so, okay, we have a test tomorrow. Okay, what do I need to know? Okay, boom, regurgitate it. I got an A, boom, let's keep it going. And that's usually how it is. And I think if we're able to, now obviously, like I said, I don't know exactly, but if we're able to remove that and make a system where it's not based on letter grades, but actually learning, then I think school would actually thrive.
The one thing I want to go back to that you said, I really appreciate you saying, you're not calling for the end of calculus or the end of teaching math or history.
No, not at all. Because we need people like that.
Bro, I remember so often, I would say, this is so useless. Why are we learning 14th century British history? And, we should be learning how to do taxes, and we should learn home economics and how to sew and how to farm and how to build, and learn how to use our hands and our minds in ways that we're actually going to have to once you leave. And while that's valid, there's something that took me a long time to figure out, and it's the benefits of getting a liberal education, the benefits of learning calculus and basic statistics and 14th century British history, and a lot of times people, they complain and they say, I'm 30 years old and I've never used, the quadratic formula or the Pythagorean theorem or any of that stuff from math class. Like, that was a waste of my time. And we couldn't even use calculators back then. And we had to memorize the formula sheets. And now I have a phone. All of their saying is valid, but they're missing a huge point, which is that when you learn about the Pythagorean theorem, it's not because in your normal day-to-day life, you're going to be tasked or charged with calculating the third angle of a triangle or something. No, it's because when you learn about that, like the Pythagorean theorem, and then you also learn 14th century British history, and then you also learn 12th century Islamic culture, and then you also learn sociology, then you also learn whatever, history, this, that, whatever. and then you combine them and you start to make the connections between these quote unquote useless pieces of knowledge, right? Then you move from knowledge to insight. Then you move from knowledge to wisdom to insight, because you're able to find ways, and I'll give you an example of this, that ways to connect it. Your cognitive skills and abilities themselves, so that you can further problem solve in the future, expand by you learning these useless things.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah. And this is, I'll give you a perfect example, right? Last year, I remember I was renovating a house with Tony, right? It was a project we were doing. We took the house all the way down to the studs, popping the top, like the whole gambit. And me and Tony were sitting there one night, I remember, and we were trying to calculate how many boards of drywall we needed. And me and Tony were able to figure out within literally less than a 5 to 10% margin of error, the exact number of drywall boards that we would need for the house. And this is something that people would come in and be like, oh, you need 100 or you need 9. We were able to say, no, we need 92
to be exact.
And then we'll add in an extra 10 for, stuff that gets broken, or, they miscut or whatever. And the reason we were able to do that, anyone could do it actually. It's not difficult, right? But we were able to do it way quicker because we remembered some basic math stuff. We remembered, hey, if you multiply this by this, and this, since this house is a square, and then you add in this, and then you divide it by these dimensions of whatever. It's not that if you didn't have you don't need calculus to learn how to do that. That's all actually the math we were doing was 3rd, 4th, 5th grade level math. It's basic level math.
Finding the area, finding, the volume,
it was I don't know the exact age, but it was basic level math. You don't need to know calculus to do it, but the benefit of having a high level maths background is that you're able to do it quicker. And that's something people keep forgetting is you do have Google in your pocket. You do have Siri and Hey Alexa, right? But what are you going to tell him? What are you going to tell Alexa and Siri and Google?
When you're trying to find the answer.
Researching skills is an underrated skill. Nowadays people are like, oh, he's a bad Googler. They're not good at Googling or finding. It's called research skills, and it comes from learning these useless information. When you have to write a research paper on useless 14th century British history, it's funny, I keep using that example. I've never studied that.
You got something wrong against 14th century British?
I've never studied that. I don't even know if Britain was a place in the... It definitely was, because that shows how ignorant my American ass is.
Because that's when the plague.
What?
Was it the 14th century or the 15th century?
The bubonic plague? Yeah. That was it was the 15th century, but it was the 1400s.
But because 15th century means 1400s.
Yes, yeah. Just like we're in the 21st.
First century and it's 2000s. Yeah.
So, there's a lot of critical thinking. There's a lot of just, what do they call it? Neuroplasticity and training, and you can make connections in your mind between varying topics that you wouldn't have been able to if you didn't learn what seems to be a lot of useless information. And that's not to say, like I said, I'm the guy who, when I was in middle school, I took home economics. I was in middle school sewing. You know what I'm saying? I was cooking. I was in class cooking and sewing. And, I took wood shop in middle school.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah,
You made a whistle.
Yeah, I made a whistle. I made pillows. We made a whole bunch of stuff. We actually we did stuff. And here's the thing, right? And even people are like, oh, I didn't learn anything useful. I took wood shop, right? I took it when I was probably 13, right?
Yeah.
You're 13 years old or
middle
so?
School or
I was middle school. So I was probably 13 years old. I never once again cut a piece of wood until I was 23. So when people are like, oh, this was useless, I don't remember shit from wood shop. If they would have taught it to me in my senior year, would it have helped any better? It's potentially, but that's not the point. The point is that you learn. And same thing with the cooking. There was a lot of stuff I had to relearn from cooking. A lot of stuff I had to relearn about sewing.
Same.
And
well, not sewing, but cooking.
Yeah. And part of the reason is because it's not the information 100%. It's the context in which they're giving it to you a lot of times.
Yeah.
When you're sitting in a class 9 hours in a row, back to back, being inundated with philosophy, math, history, science, philosophy, math, every day. No, your only break is the 30 minutes. Like you said, it's almost like a jail sentence. Like you get your 1 hour of free time. You get your 30, you don't even get free time. You get 30 minutes in the lunchroom and then back to it. Like your cattle, you know? And then we're going to springboard from this into something else real quick.
All right.
Yeah. You know, and then what ends up happening is you go and you log on Instagram, you log on Facebook.
Okay.
And then you see these dudes who are, 25 years old. They say that they're millionaires. They tell you that, they work off of a laptop. They tell you that they do real estate, that they do Forex, that they do something business related that they can't even explain.
Don't ever bring up Forex in this podcast.
Bro, Forex is legit.
It's legit, but there's a multi-level marketing scheme behind it.
I don't understand how that's possible, bro. I don't
know either.
It'd be like if someone was like, bro, like, I know a great way to make money. You'd be like, yeah, what do you need to do, bro? He's like, bro, farm, bro. Just farm. And he's like, oh, okay, tell me about it. He's like, yeah, man, you just gotta like plant stuff and whatever it grows, you sell it. You're like, yeah, that's basic.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I get it. And somehow that turns into a pyramid scheme where someone's selling you seeds and another person selling you courses on how to farm and no one farming.
The way it is
no
like
one
this.
farming.
It's like Forex,